Hello, friends. Welcome to this episode of Life with Barry Martins. My name is Barry Martins, and today I have an interesting topic, and it's about Charlie Kirk. So I'm titling this Charlie Kirk's Life and the Opinion of an African Christian. Charlie Kirk's Life and the Opinion of an African Christian. Now, if you have been following the news, you would already know by now that a Christian evangelical, I don't know if he's still evangelical, but a Christian right-wing activist known as Charlie Kirk was murdered on the campus of Utah University. So Charlie was murdered on the grounds of the campus of the Utah Valley University in the United States of America. And he was there engaging students in an open debate about critical topics around life. Now, Charlie was known for speaking his truth, speaking his mind, and standing on his belief as a Christian. I wanted to say traditional Christian, but again, why should there be traditional and untraditional Christians? But Charlie was known to be vocal and be steadfast with his faith. So he was a Christian through and through, not hiding his faith, standing on the principles of the Christian faith without sugarcoating it or dumbing it down a bit. He was very open, and he was a staunch supporter of Donald Trump. He was part of the MAGA movement to make America great again with several other right-wing activists. But I think what stood Charlie out was his going to campuses to engage young people, students, in an open debate. He would come to a campus and set a microphone, and any student, anybody can actually come and ask him any questions concerning any of the hot topics in the United States, and he's willing to answer. And I have watched a lot of those videos, and they are very engaging. They are very informative. They are very informative in both ways, both negative and positive. They are very informative in the negative way, in the sense that you are going to see the decay in the application of common sense in the life of a lot of young people. And I'm saying this as a 40-something-year-old African Christian. Remember that what I'm trying to do in this podcast is to give the opinion of an African Christian. So those conversations expose the naivety and ignorance of a lot of young people, the people we call Gen Z and Gen Alpha and all, and also shows the work that needs to be done to be able to teach, encourage, and pass on positive common sense values to the younger generation. Now, this is not me saying that everybody in the younger generation are not knowledgeable in several things about life. They are very knowledgeable, one of the most amazing people you can sit down and have conversation with. But I think that something went wrong along the line, especially for the American liberals and what they call leftist or the left wing or left leaning people in the United States of America, and I think generally around the world, because the thing about the US is once something begins in the US, it just spreads all over the world. And so in beginning to look at the opinion of an African Christian, let me first of all explain what an African Christian is. Now, we in Africa, specifically I'm talking about Nigeria because I am from Nigeria, we are a traditional people. We believe in the traditional ethics of life. For example, we believe that there is a man and there is a woman. At least majority of us believe, that there is a man and there is a woman. Still majority of us, thank God for that. And there are no other sexes in between, and we don't believe that a man can be a woman and a woman can be a man. We believe in the sanctity of life. At least most of us believe in the sanctity of life, meaning you can't just take any life, even if it's a fetus. We believe in in worshiping our God and being bold about it. We are not shy about what we believe. If an African is a Christian, they are bold, audacious Christians. If they are a Muslim, they are same thing. But this context, we're talking about the Christian faith. So we believe in that. And for a very long time, during the reign of the Democrats in the United States, they propagated a lot of anti-Christian policies. They began to force evangelicals, traditional Christians, to dumb down their Christianity to accommodate the excesses of people, so that by the time it was Obama's term in the presidency of the United States, African nations were being coerced or forced into accepting certain policies and ideologies that was not that was not intrinsic, that was not part of what we have always known, right? So that I still remember that in those days, it was odd for you to be vocal about your faith as a Christian, because somebody would just attack you that, oh, you're doing too much, you're being a fascist, you're being, you have a gay phobia or a lesbian phobia. I'm trying to get the word now. Homophobe. Yeah, that's the word. So somebody somewhere will accuse you of being a homophobe because you are maintaining that a man should be a man and a woman should be a woman. And another 500 or 1,000 people will come and support them. So it was becoming a lonely thing to be standing for the truth and speaking the truth on social media. People were cancelled, people were blacklisted, social media accounts were deleted just because people were speaking their truth, right? People lost their accounts. If you were running a platform that was a faith-based platform or a Christian platform, there's a high probability that you can't be monetized, or you wake up one morning and you will not see your account. So a lot of things were happening. Countries were being forced to accept certain things. People were lobbied with money, lobbied with all sorts, blackmailed, threatened, just because of their stand on their faith. I remember the president, the United States and several African countries having like a bit of a clash of words and, over the media concerning beliefs, right? And that led to a lot of things. So the whole leftist agenda around mass migration, around DEI, around gay and lesbian rights, several very touchy topics like that, really tried to dump down and quench the Christian faith and the traditional Christian beliefs, so that a lot of things were happening in churches. So when the likes of Charlie Kirk rose up, or when we began to hear about him, because I am going to be speaking from the point I started hearing about him and what he was doing. And I think it all came into light with the presidency of Donald Trump, where he was not shy to bring God and the Christian faith back to the front burner of American politics. So when the likes of Charlie came on board, it was a breath of fresh air. It was finally we're back to what made sense to us, because the Democrats and everything they stood for was just the other way around. There were Democrats, there were Christians. I, for the longest time, fancied myself as a Democrat, but when I started seeing that there is something called far left, when the far left policies, when the whole idea of being liberal now became being loose or being without any morals or values at all, I started retracing my steps back from being a supporter of the democratic political ideologies. And so what I'm saying today is that Charlie stood for these positive Christian ideals, and this stood him out. And that is what endeared him to us who are African Christians, because he was a voice. I wanted to say a voice in the wilderness. He was that one voice that stood for common sense, for basic Christian beliefs, for basic things that should make sense the way they are, and we don't need to complicate it anymore. Right? If again, there's just so much going on in the American society, which is spiraling into the rest of the world, that calls for concern, right? And that is what Charlie stood for, to speak against those things, to call the attention of people back to what made sense. And that was what endeared him to us. And after his death, all over the African social media, you would see right-leaning people, speaking about the legacy of Charlie, talking about how he has impacted their lives. And I am grateful that his voice and his message didn't only resonate with Americans, but also resonated with Africans and people around the world. Every right-thinking person who is not trying to, throw a hood over our eyes so that they can protect whatever their alibis and their weaknesses are, they would see that Charlie stood for the right thing. And whoever was the person that shot him, the young man that is being accused as the person that shot him, we don't know what his inspiration is. It's a very funny situation, because according to the information online, this particular young man, his parents are conservatives, but he doesn't have any political leaning. I still have lots of questions around his motive and why he decided to shoot Charlie. We'll let the legal system decide that, and investigate that and decide that. But from an African Christian's point of view, Charlie stood for something, the powerful ideals of the Christian faith, powerful ideals of the Bible, things that just made sense. And that was what endeared him to all of us. Now, as an African person, I hear someone who is an African American talking about all the negative things that Charlie might have said against African Americans. And as far as I'm concerned, Charlie didn't say any negative thing about the African American. He was just calling out something that needs to be called out. And I'm just going to go into one of it. So, for example, the African American people believe that they are economically marginalized, and this is coming as a result of many years of systemic racism, as they use the word, many years of marginalization, Jim Crow ideologies that still seeped its way into today's politics, today's opportunities for African Americans. But again, let's look at this thing. Yeah, I'm an African, core African, and I know that many of my people who go from the motherland to the United States, they do well. They go there and they take advantage of the system and they make a name for themselves. I know that Asians from around the world, Indians, Chinese, they go to the United States and they make a name for themselves. They stand out, they make a lot of money, they live a good life. So why is their story different, and then the African Americans have a different experience? Why is it that the Indians, the Chinese, the Africans who go to the United States have a different story to tell than the African Americans who have been there? What that tells me is that systemic racism also might be a systemic dysfunction in the mindset of a lot of the African American community people. The truth is, within the African American communities, there are people who are doing so well. But there's the larger population who is not doing well. Why? Because for some reason they are still in trauma. They have not crossed over to where they should believe that the system can work for them if they can apply themselves to it. Now, we know that there are several biases. There are biases, there is racism, Racism is a thing, but I refuse to see it. I did a podcast where I was talking to Africans and I say, your skin color can be an advantage or a disadvantage. You choose. And I think that the aura that you give out is what you receive. The vibe that you give out is what you receive. If you are suspecting and believing that everybody else is coming against you, that is what you will see. And that is how I see it. If you are thinking and believing that everybody else owes you something, you will keep thinking that everybody else owes you something, but in their opinion, they probably don't think they owe you anything. And I think that is the problem. One of the challenges. I'm not saying that there might not be racism. I'm saying that majority of the time, it is the mindset with which the average African American comes into the space, comes into the workspace. And that has led America to float something called DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Yeah, and I mean, right now I feel that that thing has been blown out of proportion in a negative way, because what that means is that people are now given opportunities that they are not qualified for, just because an office or a company wants to implement diversity, equality, and inclusion ideals or ideologies or policies, right? I feel, and I always believe, I think that if the playing ground is level, if the playing field is level, judge me based on the same ideals, the same terms and conditions, the same factors as every other person. And if I do better, give me the opportunity. And I think that is what America should be striving towards. And every democratic nation should be striving towards, not trying to favor one people against the other because these other people feel that they were marginalized for so many years. So everybody has to now make up for that marginalization. I mean, we're talking about something that happened, 300-400 years ago, right? So these are the values that Charlie stood for. And from the perspective of an African Christian, I am totally sold to his cause. Yeah, I love what he did. And thank God for the presidency of Donald Trump that has brought back values, common sense values, into the forefront of American politics and daily living, such that people can be held accountable for the things they say and do, and not just people who say things and then it will be covered up under some other disguise, right? So that is my opinion. Thank you for listening to me. My name is Perry Martins. And please follow me on social media at I am Perry Martins. Please share, like, and subscribe. Thank you for listening and have a great day. Bye-bye.